I should have bought you flowers, should have held your hand, given you all my hours. When I had the chance, take you to every party, 'cause all you wanted to do was dance. Now I'm sitting upright, she's sleeping with another man. The cuck chair. This is why AI needs to take my job. Welcome everybody. This is the MPL After Hours episode 4. Today we're going to be talking about the MLBB burnout and taking a break. Hopefully my ideas are a little bit, I want to improve every single time, and I've heard all the comments about the background. We're still trying things out here. This time, no green screen, baby. No green screen. This is my office, my humble abode, my sanctuary from the cruel, cruel outside world. That, and a place that I get all of my work done. But with no background, this is generally what it looks like. It's very, very plain. I'm rather surprised that my lights are working well. I did initially wanted to restream today, but I can't seem to get the stream to freaking work. I want to watch MPL Indonesia Grand Finals, and that would have been a really good time to restream that and get those watch hours, and then help me get monetized. So if you guys are doing that right now and you happen to be watching the video and just play it on repeat for the sake of my monetization. If you want to help out, please subscribe and enjoy it. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And don't forget, I do read a lot of the comments actually. While the community is still small, I can still reply to pretty much every single one of them and at least take into consideration what you guys are looking to help improve on, whether it's in-game, whether it's outside of the game, whether it's about the show, because those are the ones that I'm really receptive to. And honestly, big shout outs to you guys, because some of you are willing to go take the time out of your day to not only comment but actually give a really good comment about like important things like the background, for an example, or random audios playing. Hopefully this time I've solved like a majority of that, and this will be the last. Well, I don't know if this background is going to stay. I might improve upon it. It is my office. That is literally my door to the rest of my house, so not exactly the greatest background to be working with here, which is why I went with the green screen. But I'll explain that all in a completely separate video. I do want to make a background video to get free content. But let's talk about some of the important things and quick life updates on what's going on right now with me. Because now that the MPL MY season 17 is now over, we get to look at the big overview of the EWC storylines, right? And before we get into any of that, big shout outs to both BTRM as well as ONIC for qualifying for EWC 2026 in Paris. Big shout outs to them. Esports World Cup coming to you guys real soon. And I'm excited to see BTR because I think this time monitoring them over the regular season has been kind of interesting, right? Because you don't really know whether or not this team is going to come out swinging from the gates really strong and then eventually just not perform, right? They don't have like a baseline average. They kind of have one extreme or the other. It's either they're doing too well and they've kind of figured something out in the meta that everybody else hasn't figured out and they dominate, or they just don't do that great when it comes down to like fixing in-game issues, right? And obviously I don't want to discredit the superfan miracle, of course, for this win, but it's been a very long time coming. So big shout outs to Moreno, especially. I think a well-deserved ticket, a captain that really deserves it. He's been sticking it out with BTR and has been going through many different iterations, which is as a player has to be really, really exhausting, because as a captain, not only do you have to worry about the in-game calls, but the mentality of your fellow teammates. You could be the one that needs to inspire them. Maybe you can get somebody else to inspire them, all of which Moreno has kind of figured out in his long career in MLBB history. And it also really helps that he has Eman there to kind of back him up now that he's been there for quite some time. He's got the language down, he's got the culture down. So it really is about just making sure the rest of the team is able to kind of work around the two staples, right? And they got it down. I'm very happy for them. ONIC, nobody is really that surprised that they got through. I think through their regular season, it was pretty obvious that they were doing great, but I will give a huge shout out to the growth of CW and his big transition from a player to taking a break to now becoming a coach, which is really exciting, right? And I think that CW has always been a very intelligent player based on his professional career, based on what he tries to bridge between micro and macro play. very similar to what Kelra is doing as of right now. But I think that, Kelra, better execution. CW, he had his ups and downs, but he always had those ideas. And I think that now that he's come to the point of which he can translate all of this and how everything works with his over Emperor's eye, it's great. It's great to see him doing well as a coach for ONIC, especially coming this EWC with the biggest prize pool of the year. That's just got to feel so great. And hopefully, this time ONIC is going to go above and beyond, because we know that the last couple of times we saw ONIC go into an international last year, it's just been disappointment after disappointment, even amongst the fans and the casters were all agreeing that, yeah, we definitely think that this is one of the teams that's going to make it into the top 3. Yes, that obviously didn't happen, but we can still hope. We can still hope, and hopefully things are going to get better from here on out. But I do want to build up upon some of the storylines coming into EWC, because I think this is going to be by far the most interesting. We have wildcards happening. I'm less excited for wildcards because of a couple of things. Number one is with the format of the format of how we are distributing slots. And I've heard two sides of the argument, right? And amongst the casters as well, some business people and people who are in the kind of the ecosystem, we all have very different opinions about this, right? Some say that certain regions are too young to actually get a free slot into the main event. Most people would say that the wildcards needs to exist so that there's more opportunities for teams to actually make it into the bigger stages. But what I would say, I think that the tournament has to kind of break itself apart into 3 segments, right? Those who are, first placers definitely need to get a bye, but everybody else, I feel, needs to go through a tougher play-in. I feel like right now, 2 slots from wildcards is all right, but I think we might be able to go eventually if we're going to keep on getting more and more MPLs. And I think there should also be an argument for whether MDLs should technically be associated with the qualifiers of wildcards, right? That's what I think would be really, really interesting. I think the teams from major regions who don't need to fight for that wildcard slot immediately go into that main event, but they have to go through the play-ins, right? They get to the play-ins, then they make it to the group stages, and then everybody can kind of play their rounds. So there's one more level of filtering before we get to that last point. That's just me. What I also have heard is that, especially when it comes down to the MDL, coming up with the internet potential, this is rumors of potential international for just the MDLs. I don't think it's a good idea. I see it from a business perspective, and that makes a lot of sense, right? If there is more leagues that allow you to kind of get into an international experience type environment, it's good not only for the players, but the exposure for the business, and therefore a potential to eventually kind of rise up the ranks. And I think that's a big problem right now. There's no dedicated way to get into the main event without a huge commitment. And I think that's the big problem for people wanting to kind of get into the ecosystem. And not to mention that, bigger organizations, and now with the rule changes to EWC, the club championships are less easy to kind of take advantage of, right? Because now, if you're coming in, you better own the team. You can't just do these loaning nonsense that we saw last year with FNOP, TL Echo, eventually just getting full acquisition here by Liquid, which again, very smart choice. But then again, they also have a ridiculous amount of money to do and make that happen, because not only did they take over in the PH, they also decided to take over within MPL ID. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 deal, and I think that's one of the better choices or better ways to approach it than, let's say, Falcons, who had infinite money, got the best team at that point of time. They win. No surprises there. We win as SRG, but they got second place, which is still pretty darn good. And they are still one of the few teams that, honestly, they are fucking scary. And it's great to see them back at EWC with, they got second place. They're coming to TLID, who has won MSC before, both of which has fought SRG, and that's an awesome time. That's just such a sick storyline to already have going for us. And then we add ONIC into the mix to try and redeem themselves for last year, whether it be M6 or whether it's going to M7 or whether it was going to be MSC. That too is also going to add to the stakes. And then finally BTR out of nowhere. The last time we've seen them actually get anywhere remotely close to an international win was SPS. And even then, would you say that was their strongest lineup? Mixed bag of answers here. It's a little tough to say for certain, and I can agree with that. I can definitely agree with that. But that's just EWC. There's so many more things to talk about with EWC, but we want to see the rest of the qualifiers to kind of get a better description of what these teams are going to be looking like, or at least predictions, which probably we're going to be making later down the line, maybe later this month. We'll see if there's a little bit of time for that. But hey, that's just me. And that's all the MLBB kind of out of the way. Big shout outs to both BTRM as well as ONIC. But let's start talking about the things that I really want to get into here. And that's like MLBB burnout and taking a break, because both of these things, MLBB burnout and taking, most people don't take a good break, right? They say they're taking a break, but they're still stressed about things, so you're not really getting rest. So that's kind of what I want to address, right? Because MLBB burnout I have been working in this industry for about 11 years at this point. We are going into season 17, 2 seasons every single year. So therefore, if it's 17, the closest even number is 8. So it will be 8 years. 8-ish years within MLBB. 11 maybe going into, 12, going into the 12th year of total start to finish. Start to currently casting, and then 8.5 of those years. 8.5 of those years. Oh, I'm actually going into 9. Yeah, 8 going into 9 is going to be my stint with MLBB. And in that stint of MLBB, I definitely burnt myself out. And I burnt myself out really, really hard. I think I started to feel it. I would say after M4, because I feel like I put on I put everything on the table for those 2 years. Well, 4 years, in a matter of fact. M1 was the big break for me. And after M1, I was still like motivated. I knew for a fact that this wasn't the best. Performance that I could give to not only the audience members into that audience, but it was the performance that the best performance I could give at that point in time. And I knew that there was a higher ceiling. So that's what I worked towards through in the next couple of years. And that's where I'm like trying to establish myself as like clearly better than everybody else as a caster. You know, I'm somebody looking for that personality, looking for that like that place, rather a place in the MLBB system that isn't, oh, he's just been there, you know, he was there, he's like an oldie. You know, I wanted a little bit more of a legacy in my younger years, and I worked really hard to try and build up on that legacy until real life started to hit, and then you realize that the legacy doesn't really fucking matter. I wanted the legacy because for some reason, maybe it was like an achievement for me to tell not only to myself but to my parents that I have made it, that I've done something with this life of mine despite not going through the traditional route. I think a lot of that had to do with just ego for a good chunk of it. I don't think it is allowed me to, you know, create some really special relationships and great connections with some people within the esports industry, but at the same time, it also takes away from some, like I've missed out so many birthdays. I've missed out weddings because of this job to some of the closest people in my life. To them, I'm so sorry for not making it to like, and it's not because it is a choice of, hey, well, technically, to be fair, everything is a choice, if I'm being completely honest. But at least I don't have to put them in a position of telling them, hey, I can't go to your wedding, or I could go to your wedding, but here's the amount of money I could be losing just showing up for this one day, you know? And I think that most of my close friends are understandable enough to be like, dude, chase that bag. Like, we know that, you know, adult life is difficult. You need to chase that bag. And because of that, and all the like chasing for content early on, it burnt me out. These are all skills that I had to learn. Like casting, yes, I had natural talent for the casting and public speaking, but a lot of the refinement came down to the hard work. A lot of repetitions, you know, a lot of talking to co-casters, a lot of really, really improving over that period of time. And then once I kind of got closer past M4 is where things didn't really matter too much. M5 comes around, M6, and then even for those of you who've been following, I even made mentions of like, hey, eventually I want to move away from MLBB because I was getting so burnt out. I would be doing event after event every other weekend for maybe another MPL, another MDL, or something of that sort. And that's just not the life I really want to live. I just want to work on my weekends and have my weekdays free to kind of do whatever I want, right? And that's the most ideal scenario. Unfortunately, for the adult life, you don't get the ideals. And that's why it's important. That's why people talk about work life balance. But in our line of work, when it comes down to shoutcasting or freelancing, especially if it's an event-based project, that's when it becomes difficult because you're giving 120% every day when I'm on that camera, and that only happens on the weekends. And those 3 days felt like I've been at a 9 to 5 for 6 days because of so much energy being expended. It's a physically demanding job. You're saying, "Oh yeah, oh he's talking a lot over a bunch of games." You guys should give it a try. You guys need to give it a try of being able to kind of fill up that space for huge periods of time. And there's like a huge list of rules of things you cannot say, things you're allowed to say, things I would rather you not say, but in case you do, just play along the lines. There's a lot of rules, and there's a lot of people talking in your ear for certain things to get the show going. It is a difficult experience, and it's not an easy job. Not to say that I don't love this job, but I'm saying that a lot of the burnout is because there's just such a huge concentration of Mobile Legends content. You're doing content creation over it. It's part of your job. It's part of your personality. My entire life isn't Mobile Legends, unfortunately. And like the introductory video of what we are doing with RRQ Shop, I do have other hobbies. The RGS, retro gaming, that's definitely one. I love things in the 90s. Best couple of years, a lot of interesting innovations being made in that time, which is why I will always say that in the 1990s, best year of technology. Guys, if you're still watching, thank you so much for still sticking around. Make sure you go check out the RRQ shop if you're looking to top up some diamonds. They've got a recent event, especially if you're interested in the Sanrio. Use code GideonQ. Gmon June is currently happening right now. So not only just for Mobile Legends, but for actually a decent amount of other games. You can actually get their in-game currency pretty cheap so far. So please take advantage of the deal and check out RRQ Shop while you still can before continuing this video. And if you like the content, please subscribe, like, and also comment on anything about it. What we could do better, things that you are interested for me to talk about, or at least, help me create some content as we continue to try and monetize this video. Thank you so much, and back to the show. So yeah, this is the life update of sorts, I would say. With everything that has been going on and the burnout, I started to feel that burnout start to kind of build up during the latter sections of the MPL MY. Even this year, I told you about my previous experiences, but now building up to it, at least after the MPL MY season 17 was done, it was a 3-day nature retreat. And honestly, it was a pretty humbling experience going into that nature retreat. It was more like glamping, it wasn't purely camping. We weren't like, trying to build fires on our own, rubbing sticks together to hopefully make things work. There was an AC. It was very nice rooms. Plenty of chalets on the outside, close to nature, very, very nice. But it was humbling because it gave me a lot of time that I initially thought I didn't have, right? It gave me time to actually look into myself, the introspection of what my life is currently and what I could do about it. And two big things came up into mind. And one is definitely related to the other, right? The first one, when I was introspecting and I was sitting on the chalet looking out into the trees in the middle of the night, getting attacked by bugs from every single direction, were my finances. Recently, prior to the MPL's ending, I had to pay tax. And if you know anything about tax, generally speaking, it's different amongst every country. This isn't financial advice or anything of that sort. But I ended up paying, like, I recently went with an accountant and they told me, hey, you are in this tax bracket, therefore you need to pay this much of taxes. And you have a business account, so there could be exemptions. And we were figuring all of that within 3 weeks, and I was doing a lot of bookkeeping. That sucked. That was not a fun time, but it was necessary. I ended up paying 11,000, which was honestly all I had in reserves. But luckily, the MPL MY, and also my wife able to kind of come in when the payments start to come through. Rent was taken care of, and we get to survive for another couple months. That's just how it works. That's just the way it is. We don't all have it really, really good. Not everybody is living in $1 million mansions. Like, that's just not the case. Everybody has a different story. Unfortunately, I wish I had way more money to not be worried about 11K. Maybe if I didn't get scammed, maybe if I didn't, I cut down on spending, I could have had a little bit more. But inevitably, it was on me. And that really stressed me out. Like this one little oversight of, hey, had I just sent my invoice in and not try to combine my invoices to get paid at the end of the season, but follow along with the plan, I would have had enough to kind of make it through and not be so stressed about it and not cause so much tension in the household. Small things like that. Small things like that. That's just one sector of me being worried that, my finances and as well as taxes. But the second thing that is very closely related, not to the taxes, but more to the finances, is expanding my horizons. Now, MLBB is a pretty rigid schedule, right? Like, let's take Valorant or Valorant for an example, because they've got beginning of the year tournament. Then they've got their regular seasons to figure out who goes to the international at Masters, and then another regular season to see who goes into champions at the close to the end of the year. I think at the beginning of Q4 in business terms, which means that there's like 2 clean months of nothingness, or sorry, I think it might be more than that, like 2.5 months of absolute nothingness, maybe even more, 3, maybe 4. I can't remember if they changed the schedule. They've done it a couple of times, but what I'm trying to say is that MLBB in particular is particularly tight. Every other day, I think there in a year there is only 1 month, sorry, 2 months total that we actually have a breathing room, between events without having to do something. But if you do the content creation on top of that, then you truly don't have any time for yourself. You are just constantly at work. Every weekend, there's something to restream. Every weekend, there is another cast that goes on. Every weekend, there could be another podcast. There's a lot of different things that have to happen, and that takes up a lot of time, right? And weekends are prime real estate for me, so I got to figure out something to do on my free days. And to a certain degree, I was expanding my casting catalog, and I had a pretty extensive casting catalog. If I'm being completely honest with you guys, my casting catalog prior to MLBB was huge. I was doing League of Legends, I was doing AOV, AOV at that point of time. Competitors, the Brawl Stars even came out at that point of time. A lot of different games. Identity V, their second to third international. I was there for one of it just to kind of fill in spaces. But then again, it was an amazing opportunity, and had a lifelong experience that I will never forget. It's one of those things where it's not enough. I think I can't go through the casting because unfortunately, there's only 7 days in a week. And Free Fire has been amazing, has also been amazing, but it's starting to also clash into the schedule. And I like doing Free Fire. Don't get me wrong. As much as I like doing MOBAs because I like the technical aspect of it, Free Fire I think is one of the few games that, personally speaking, not a bad battle royale. Maybe I don't like the mechanics, like the actual shooting mechanics of the game, but everything outside of that is actually pretty awesome. I tried expanding out of it. Obviously, there's a clash of interest, conflict of interest between Muntun as well as Garena at times, especially if there's, clashing schedules. Obviously, I'm supposed to get the choice that, but then again, there are bigger things at play. But one of my biggest strengths that I would say, what I feel that I at least have control over, despite this world throwing me curveball after curveball after curveball, is the way that I react to it, right? I I can almost guarantee that my first reaction is always bad. It's always bad towards something. If I feel like someone has wronged me, I would expect the other person to take responsibility and do something about it. But that doesn't necessarily work in the business world, right? They're gonna fuck you over and they're just gonna be like, it's business, and you just have to say yes, okay, right? So one of my biggest strengths that I've noticed as a young child, because I got kicked out of my house once because of my greatest strength, was the fact that setting goals is good for most people. But the problem is the way they go about it, right? I really don't like it when somebody sets a goal and immediately is they're complaining how impossible this goal was. Like, what do you mean? What do you set the goal, right? If you're setting the goal, make sure that it's something that you can attain, right? That definitely helps. If you made it slightly harder, just to challenge yourself, there's nothing to complain about, right? The most that you can complain about is like, yeah, it's hard. That's as much as I want to hear from you. You can be a little bit more specific of why it's hard. That also helps to give me more context into your particular scenario. But if you're telling me that I can't let something simple, I can't throw out the trash because I don't like the smell, then get some nose plugs. It's something as simple as that. Feeling a certain way if we're going more of a emotional standpoint, right? I can't stand my ground because I compromise under the pressure. Or this person has wronged me and it is ruining multiple days every other day after that because that one experience is miserable. My greatest strength is the fact that I can not only set a goal that is rightfully attainable for me because I'm self-aware enough, but also making a decision to not feel a certain way. Now, let me explain. When I was young, my mom knew that I was an avid gamer, and to the point where I would get into a lot of trouble with my parents because of it, because it's a clash of interests. They want me to study. I want to play video games. I want to get I'm getting like passing grades. I'm only failing literally one subject, which was Malay, and for good reason. I was bad. There's a reason why I only do English. I can speak BM. I have not scored very, very high for it in my entire lifetime. Well, maybe once, but that's when I was a young child. But essentially, whenever my parents would be, "Hey, put down the games, go and study, or go to your tuition. You skip out on any of these things, you get punished." And depending on the punishment, I would still go ahead and play the games. You know, getting spanked, no problem. Eventually, you outgrow that. You become when you're as big of a boy as me and as tall as I am. It did honestly, it sucks. It still hurts, but I can just grit my teeth. It's not the end of the world for another hour of a gaming session. It came to the point where my dad had to get involved, and his was the extreme ones. It's like, okay, I clearly can't hit. I clearly can't spank you anymore. So the only other way that I am going to teach you this lesson about consequences is if I kick you out of the house if I catch you again. And of course, I got caught again playing video games that not only I shouldn't be playing because of my parents' rules. And no, it wasn't a porn game. Don't I know some of you are going to be thinking like, oh, you dirty boy playing some dirty. No, no, no. It was just like waking up in the middle of the night and playing early into the hours of morning. That was basically it. Parents not happy with that, kicked me out for a week, an entire week. Just kicked me out, just gone out of the house. And I think that was the first time where I realized like maybe I might not be able to handle this. But realistically speaking, I could. I knew that I could survive. It was just going to be a little uncomfortable. But it also gave me a lot of time to kind of think like, honestly, it makes you question like, is it worth it? Should I be bitter at my parents because of this? And the more that I sat and thought about it, the more I was like, no, I was clearly in the wrong. As much as I feel upset about it, it is unjust to feel this way knowing the context. And that's why I decided I'm just not going to be mad at them for it. I took the punishment. I got out of the house. My mom was she was upset, but she was also concerned. But she also looked at me and I looked at her. And I think there was an understanding of like, this is necessary and this needs to happen. And I think at that point, my mom also recognized like, oh, yeah, he's growing up. He's becoming a man now. I could see it in his face. And my dad knew as he was coming out, I was like, I'm stressed. I'm worried that he's not going to make it back. I know he has the skills to survive, but there is no guarantee and is out of my control because my dad, similar to his son, and probably why I got it, why I got, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure this skill is hereditary because my dad said the same thing. He was just like, I hope you're going to come back all right. And that's what he told my mom. I hope he comes back all right, but this is necessary. And my mom just had to agree. I made it back, and it made me better because of it, and it made me more self-aware. So at least we're going to round this off by saying, hey, whatever is happening in your life, not everybody is going to be the same. And maybe you don't have the superpower to just make a decision or not feel a certain way and carry out with the rest of your day. But I think it's really important that you take that break. You take that break to figure it out, to tell yourself what is the next course of action, to be able to reset your mental, to be able to come out and give your 100% again the following day consistently every single day in everything that you guys do. So hopefully this inspires you. Hopefully this, kind of gives you some introspection about, certain things that are happening on. Obviously, I could have gone, out of my way to just keep talking about Mobile Legends the entire MPL AH, but I definitely think that this is something that hopefully my fellow co-casters are going to hear and just, yeah, understand that there are a lot of things that are out of our control. We cannot expect everybody to be the same way. But what we can expect is that we are willing to share our experiences and to talk about the important things, right? These are the conversations that generally I call this the after hours for very good reason. Not necessarily are we talking about Mobile Legends every waking second, but these are the conversations that we sit down and talk after the show. These are important things to us, not only the storylines, but how we're doing in each other's lives, right? And that's why we're the tightest group of nobody's like the Mobile Legend talents because we're just the tightest group of people. And I wouldn't want to work with anybody else because I think that these guys, they're what's helping me every single day show up to work and be like, I'm excited to do another round. Thank you so much for sticking in, tuning in. Let me know about the background you prefer, the no green screen effect, and then once I compile all the answers, I'll make a video about it. I'll catch you on the next one. And again, I'm filming this before the grand finals of the MPL ID. So big shout outs to BTR alongside with ONIC. Good luck to your matchup. And hey, we'll catch you later. See you on another episode of the MPL After Hours.